I've gone back to the example just before the notes on subtraction, and you can see here that I've gone through the process of actually drawing the graph. This question requires you to find the area between the parabola y equals x squared minus 4x plus 2 and y equals x minus 2. If we could for a moment just go back to our what do we see, think and wonder. Now, if the question was just this typed bit, which is what the question, would be, if you couldn't see the working that I've actually added here, what do you actually see? So find the area between the curve y equals x squared minus 4x plus 2. Hopefully you see that, yes, that is a parabola and a straight line. Parabola and a straight line. What do you know? What do you know about the parabola? You know it's a parabola up the right way, cuts the y-axis at 2. And what do you know about this? It's a straight line, positive slope, cuts the y-axis at negative 2. You'll need to be much more specific and have more details than that about your graph in order to be able to calculate the area by integration. You'll probably get to realise after having done a few more examples that when you've got this situation, it usually means the straight line is going to cut through the parabola. You're going to have a region which has straight line as its top boundary and the parabola as its bottom boundary. So that you'll only get to that stage through doing lots of questions and by experience. So what are you thinking at this stage before you can even see the diagram? You're thinking, what does that parabola look like on the actual number plane? Where does it sit on the number plane? So there's lots of things that you've got to, investigation you've got to do so that you can answer those questions. Why the straight line, y equals x minus 2, you can probably imagine that. It's pretty straightforward, not a lot you have to do to be able to graph that. What you can see here is when I started, and I've jotted down all my thoughts, and I encourage you to do that as well. Jot down your thoughts, it doesn't hurt. With y equals x squared minus 4x plus 2, I was trying to find where y would be equal to 0, where it would cut the x-axis. I couldn't find anything, two numbers that multiplied at 2 to give negative 4. My first thought was, well, does this parabola even cut the x-axis? So I went through and found the axis of symmetry, found that occurred at x equals 2, and found that the y value of the vertex was actually negative 2 when subbing x equal to 2 into the function. And so realised then that it had to cut the x-axis. Where exactly does it cut the x-axis? I didn't know whether that at this stage would be important, so I'm using my quadratic formula to identify the two x values, and you get 2 plus root 2, which is over here at a bit more than 3, and 2 minus root 2, which is down there at about a half. So I could see that it cut at a bit over 3 and at about a half, and I know the middle of that is 2. What else have I gone undone? Oh, I've pursued the point of intersection now. To graph the straight line, cutting at minus 2 with a positive gradient, rise 1, run 1, it's looking like when I draw this straight line, rise 1, run 1, gradient 1, it's looking like it possibly cuts at x is 1, y is minus 1. Just confirming these points of intersection, and I'd need to do the algebra part anyway to identify this point of intersection. So I'm putting the two things equal to one another, solving that, and you get x is equal to 1 and 4. Yes, so I was right in thinking that that's where my straight line would intersect, firstly, and then later at 4. Now, at this point we stop. and reassess what's going on. So I know that my region between these is has a top boundary of the straight line, bottom boundary of the red line. What I can see here with this is that, again, there's a bit of this area is above the x-axis, a bit of the area is below the x-axis. How is that going to complicate the situation? The answer to that is it's not. It's not. We don't have to take area above, area below being positive, area below being negative. We don't have to take that into consideration. We simply go with the area of this region will be the integral of the top function minus the bottom function. Now, you can spend a little bit of time sorting out why that actually always works. I'm not going to go into that in this video. I encourage you to ask me in class where I've got the time to go through that with you. You may work it out. You may pause the video, work it out for yourself as to why that actually works. I'm just going to go straight into the actual process, and please don't interpret that as valuing the actual understanding. It's just that within the video it doesn't make sense for me to expand on the understanding, but I'm more than happy to do that in class. I'm going to pause the video and write up the solution. So the area of this region is, as I was saying, is the area of the straight line, subtract the parabola function. Now, you'll see that I've made it pretty obvious that you need these brackets, and I'll just keep saying it over and over. The most common mistake is because students don't use brackets, they get lost with their basic arithmetic. It's really involving negatives, which then makes your algebra wrong, which makes your integration wrong, which gives you the wrong answer. Now, you can have a fantastic understanding of all of this concept, but you're not going to get the marks because you've made a fundamental basic mistake. Markers' feedback is students are not going to be rewarded if they can't do the basics. So you've got to show that you are being very careful and you can do the basics. So, yeah, you can see that, and I hope I haven't made a mistake. It's looking okay. All I'm doing is I'm not integrating yet, and I did notice in the preliminary exam people are still unsure as to whether they should be using the integration symbol or not. You really have to get that sorted now. Know that the moment you are integrating, using that process, adding one to the index, divide by the new index, you don't use the integration symbol because you are actually integrating. At the moment I'm using it because all I'm doing from one line to the next is simplifying my expression, getting it into a state such that is more easy for me to integrate. Sure, I could integrate this, but I'm going to have some doubling up of terms, and it's not the most sensible form to put that in. It's always best to simplify before you do anything anywhere, actually. So, minus the x squared plus the 5x, subtract 4. It's now in a format. Can't do any more simplifying. I would integrate. Hence, no integration symbol. Adding one to the index, dividing by the new index. Adding to the index, dividing by the new index. Not taking any shortcuts. Can't emphasize that enough either. Students, unfortunately, for many of you, you have not had enough practice with algebra to be taking shortcuts. You have not done enough very long, involved algebraic solutions to ensure that your accuracy is 100%. You haven't done enough of those, hence you need to show every line of your working. Same once we come to substituting the numbers in. Substitute your 4 in. Keep track of all your signs. And again, because the fundamental theorem of calculus is sub in the first value and subtract the substitution of the second value, this subtracting more than one thing will again require brackets. I hope you can hear in my voice the frustration that I'm feeling because I see students throw away marks because they're not doing something as basic as using brackets. Now, there'll be plenty of times for you to throw away marks because you mightn't have a deep enough understanding of what the question's asking you to do, but that is not this case. This case is students will throw away marks because they're just not, using something as simple as a bracket. Okay, so we are doing our calculation, and again, doing our calculation, keeping the bracket, expanding the bracket, finally going to a calculator. Hopefully I've used my calculator correctly to get this answer. Please take note of the things I've emphasised. You need to be jotting down your own key points in each video, from each video. What is it I've really emphasised that you need to take on board? These things I'm emphasising are things that are going to come up in assessment tasks. They're going to affect your result, and they're things that I'm saying to you now you really need to work on and be aware of in order for you to get the best result you possibly can.